Okay. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. So just a quick review. This was what we had spoken about the last time, and this is what we closed with. This is the end of the text. This is what Imam al-Haramain al-Juwayni, he says, according to correct view, a command does not require repetition of the act. What does that mean?
Like, doesn't mean like get up and pray, and get up and pray again.
Oh, okay, good. Like once I make Salat al-Dhuhr, I fulfilled the obligation. It's not necessary to repeat that same exact action again, unless some evidence indicates that repetition is intended. So like if we have a general command for prayer, if we have a general command to give zakat, like for example, zakat, if I give zakat this year, does it mean that I don't have to give it again next year? No, right? I have to give it every single year. Yeah, I won't get into it. No. Yeah, no. So you guys know how zakat works, right? So basically, zakat is a minimum amount that you have to hold. You guys happen to know what that minimum amount is this year? It's $5,300. So if you use the gold standard, right? So if you use the gold standard, it's about $5,300 now, meaning that if I'm holding above $5,300, I am above nisab, and nisab is the minimum threshold, and I have to hold at least that amount for a year. So a brother, he asked me a question. He said, okay, if I have $10,000, why is it that I have to pay on that $10,000 if I hold it for another year? How's that fair? All right. So if I paid 2.5% of 10,000 is $250, right? So I paid $250 this year. Next year I have $9,750. How is it fair that I have to pay zakat on that again?
Because you could have invested and make money out of those remaining money.
Okay, so the counter argument from him was that, okay, well, that makes sense that I'm paying on the profit. How does it make sense that I'm paying on the principal?
Well,
That's a good question.
But here, it is ta'abudi, and the majority of fuqaha, all of the four schools, they say that you have to pay it on the minimum threshold, regardless of how much it shifts, regardless if you're in profit or if you're in loss, as long as you're above the minimum threshold, except the Lahidis. So the literate school, they actually have this concept of, once you pay zakat on it, you don't have to pay zakat on that same amount again. So
there's hadith of the Prophet when he said, invest children's money, children's wealth, to guard us. Otherwise, their wealth they'll
be wasted. Yeah. Okay. What does that have to do with zakat though?
The argument against
that's a
daughters.
No,
as far as I heard, they had mentioned zakat.
But that has here. Number one, it has to do with the zakat, but that's more from the understanding of the fuqaha. They take the hadith, they say, okay, the Prophet ﷺ is ordering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the way he's dealing with the person who overlooks the money. So basically the scenario that Nazim's putting forward is that you have an orphan, right? You have an orphan who's come into money, and then there's somebody who is who has been, he's basically a ward of the state. So now somebody from the state is the social worker who's in charge of taking care of this child, okay? The child's not of age, so you can't just give him the money, because like, what is an 8-year-old going to do with $10,000? Probably buy a lot of PlayStations, right? So like, so what happens is that you because he's a ward of the state, you have somebody who's appointed to overlook this child. Now this person, what does he do with that money? Does he just sit on it and then pay zakat on it every single year? So what'll happen by the time, so if he's 8 years old, in the next, let's say 10 years, but when he's 18, that's when the state decides that they're going to give him the money. When he turns 18, what's going to happen to that $10,000 in the next 10 years?
It's going to depreciate in value.
Right. Not only is it going to depreciate in value, but what else is going to happen to it? It's going to be, right, it's going to be taxed, but through zakat. Every single year, you're going to be paying like an exponential 2.5% for that next 10 years. So if you're paying roughly $250 for 10 years, that's $2,500. So instead of him having $10,000, he'll have around 7,000 or so. And the value of that 7,000, was it the same as it was 10 years ago? No. So over here, the command is to do what? What is the best thing to do with that money? To invest it, right? You from the investment, it's okay for the caretaker to take some of the dividends because he's basically in charge. He's being paid to watch over this child, and he's in charge of being in this investment manager where he's overlooking the investments that for this child. So by the time that child reaches age, he has a reasonable amount of money with him that hasn't depreciated in value. Actually, it's appreciated. So the argument here, this is the istinbat of the fuqaha. The fuqaha have said the Prophet ﷺ did this. Why? Because of the reasons that we mentioned. But there's no clear mention of the situation that I'm talking about. This is all understood. All the things that we're talking about, the depreciation and the zakat, this is something that we understood. It's not something that the Prophet ﷺ directly said. So they're very unique, right? Yeah.
Unique
Viewpoint in the fatwa. I agree. Huh?
It says what?
I mean, so there has to be a reasonable response, and the reasonable response, at least for me, is that money is liquid, right? Money's liquid. There's always. It's not possible that it went like if I have money and it went from 10,000, I paid $250, and I have $9,750 the next year. I didn't spend any money in that year. I didn't earn any money in that year. Yes or no?
No.
Yeah.
Of course, I just sat, like I was able to sit for an entire lunar year without having to do anything. No, it's not possible, right? This is not something that's realistic. So if you treat money like liquid, what does that mean? It's like, yeah, the overall amount of liquid has decreased, but has there been a constant inflow and outflow? And because there's a constant inflow and outflow, what does that mean? That I've managed to it's not about I've held this amount, I've maintained it. There's a difference. Do you guys follow the difference? Right. So me maintaining an amount means that I had to have earned money in order to get to that point, and I've had to spend money to get to that point. It doesn't mean that my money has been static. So this idea of old money and new money, this is a very literalist, a very Lahiri approach. But the majority of scholars, this is the reason that they view this idea of money. Like you can't separate money because essentially it's liquid. I think is a little bit of confusion, or no?
But you still pay zakat on it, even if it's not the same.
No, but
10,000
no.
that you had.
So anyway, exactly, because that 9,750 is that the same 9,750 from the previous year? No, because that money was spent throughout the year, and that's why this idea of differentiating between money, you really can't. It's very challenging. It's very difficult because money is essentially what? Well, not just that. It's a measurement. Right, money is a measurement. Like, and it's not when I have like 2 inches or 10 inches or a gallon of water. It's not like I can take out the old milk or take out the old orange juice. Right, it's just all liquid. It's all together, and it's the same way that we kind of deal with money. And it's honestly an easier way of doing that. Otherwise, you're going to have multiple fiscal years, multiple hauls, and multiple nisabs, and it becomes chaotic. It really does become chaotic.
So you just paid.
No, go ahead.
You pay. So you paid 2.5% on the 975 or on the 10 originally?
No, you'd pay it on the amount that you have at the end of your fiscal year.
Okay.
So whether it increases or decreases, it's irrelevant, because even if it decreases, that doesn't mean that means that I was able to maintain that amount, that I still had money coming in.
Yeah.
I'm not being penalized for anything. I'm still earning. If anything, if we want to look at zakat as a penalty, it's a penalty for doing what? For not saving. Another word for saving is what? Hoarding. Think about it, right? Zakat is actually a penalty. If you want to look at it as a penalty, it's a penalty for me holding on to my money. Meaning, what am I not doing with it? I'm not. Not everything is giving sadaqah, right? I mean, mashallah, like altruists, right? We're just like throwing our money away. But what are we not doing? We're not spending it. We're not what? We're not investing it. Right? We're not making partnerships with people. Like we're not building infrastructure. There's a lot of things that we could be putting our money in. And when we think about that, someone might be like, okay, well, if you're spending money, you're a spendthrift. But where am I spending my money? Either on one of two things in the economy, either goods or services, right? These are the two things that I'm spending it on. Meaning that, okay, yeah, I'm wasteful, but someone else is gaining. Someone else is benefiting from that. Whether it's like, if I buy, someone might be like, oh, he didn't need to buy a yacht, but who benefited in that transaction? The yacht maker, right? Like somebody benefited from that transaction. So it's always important to keep in mind that there's two sides to every transaction. And just because one side is being a spendthrift or wasting their money, it doesn't necessarily mean that the other side cannot benefit. Yeah.
Contra argument to that.
Sure.
Argument is well, you pay property tax for the same car, for the same real estate.
Yeah.
You could treat this money the same way. And back then, there were
yeah.
currency like
So
natural.
so the Lahiri response would be like, yeah, you're not supposed to give it on those either. In addition to the other group of assets that they don't put any zakat on is tradable goods.
Well, on this I agree
Yeah.
with them because
Yeah.
if you remember, I said
Yeah.
it as a
Sure.
Not any good becomes currency. There is
Sure.
4 or 5 function criteria in
Uh-huh.
economic theory that makes
Something a currency. Yeah. And I can see that argument to me is stronger. I just don't.
Yeah.
I don't think it's as valid. So nor does it require immediate action. Now we said that there was a difference of opinion of scholars on this. Which group I don't know if you guys remember, which group says that when a command comes, you're obligated to act on the command immediately? Or which madhāhib? The Hanabila, right? We're always extremists. So like you have to act on it immediately. Meaning what? Right, you have to pray as soon as the prayer comes in. But if I say that it doesn't require immediate action, that allows me what? Like, so if a lot of time comes in, I can do what? I have a window, right? I have a window. And that's all this means. And if we think about it, every single ibadah has windows, right? Every single ibadah has windows. I guess there's a related issue to this. Someone had asked me about it. Is it okay for me to make my sunnah fasts before my obligatory ones that I need to make up?
I think that question makes resources every Ramadan because if you want to visit the Ayam Shawwal,
Yeah.
or we have makeup days,
Sure.
they overlap.
So I think this is a good uṣūli argument. How can we argue both sides? So for those people who say that you have to do the obligation first before you do any sunnah, what is their argument? Yeah.
Well, not about that, but I heard that if you're making up
Mhm.
and it's a sunnah, you might be able to get both. Is that not right?
So
You know what I mean?
that is like it's Shaykh al-Islam's opinion on the subject, and basically what he says is that you do the qada with the intention that you also want to do the sunnah. Yeah, and he's like, you're not going to get the full reward of the sunnah, but you get like partial credit type of deal.
Weak.
Yeah. 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 So basically, if I need fast that I have to make up in Shawwal, and there's not enough time for me to do the 6 days of Shawwal. So what can I do? I fast with the intention of making this up, in the additional intention of one of the 6 days of Shawwal.
But you cannot combine with far anything else.
Listen, I'm with you.
Okay.
I'm just saying, so that's the counter argument. Because of the tight windows that are there, Shaykh al-Islam, he proposes this. Like, it's kind of like a middle type thing. But the problem I have is the same one that you do. You can't combine, like, it's like me saying that someone sees me praying my 4 fard and they're like, Sheikh, we didn't see you praying your sunnah. It's like, no, I included my intention. Like, I doubled up.
Right. I would understand if someone decided to make all their faraid for fasting on Monday and Thursday.
Yeah.
But with clear intention, it is far.
Yeah.
I'm doing fasting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, out of all 7 days, I chose Monday and Thursday.
Yeah.
But with clear intention, it is far.
So will you get extra reward for choosing Monday? Do you understand? This is where the ishkal comes in. This is where the issue comes in. Like, okay, yeah, you fast every Monday and Thursday, that's fine. Or like, I've decided to choose Mondays and Thursdays in the 3 middle days of the month. Or I've decided to choose Monday and Thursday in the first 6 days of Shawwal. You understand? Yeah.
Say, okay, I don't want to lose this habit of fasting Monday and Thursday.
Sure, that's different. So he's going to continue his habit, right? I think that's a different scenario. He doesn't want to lose a habit, so he wants to continue upon that, and I'm okay with that. But let's saving that opinion. Let's put that one a little bit to the side. Let's focus on 2 right now, because I think they're a little bit clearer. If I'm of the opinion that I have to do the obligatory fast first, or I'm of the opinion that I can do the sunnah fast first, how would I justify both of these arguments, or either of these arguments? Yeah, uṣūliyin. Yes.
My logic is for me to do Shawwal first because that's a limited window, and then they can do it anytime.
So over here, right? If something has a window, the window for Shawwal is, it's only in Shawwal, right? I can't be like, all right, let me make it up and let me do it in the Shawwal fast in Muharram, right? It's not, it doesn't work. There are fixed days and there's fixed fadila and fixed virtue for that particular time. So because that window is fixed versus the window of the qada, right? So for me to make up my fast, how big is that window? Until next Ramadan, right? Until next Ramadan. So because that window is broader, then rationally it makes sense, right? If you have a tighter window, I should be able to take advantage of that smaller window if there's a larger window for the other one. Tayyib, what else? What is the counter argument to that?
Just evidence to that would be Aisha radiallahu
Mhm.
anha, who would delay her makeup.
Yeah, she would make up her qada when? In Shaban, right? And Shaban is when?
1 month.
Right, it's like a
Right
month.
prior.
It's like immediately prior to Ramadan. Yes.
So you can fast any days of Shawwal. Does that have to be the first 6 days?
No, it can be any 6, inshallah.
I
Yeah.
have 1 month window. If
Mhm.
I want to do Sunnah as an example, the first week of Shawwal,
Yeah.
I go and do my
Qada. Yeah.
Qada.
hmm
So, what do you think?
I'm asking you.
I think it's possible because I have 1 month window for the Shawwal.
Uh-huh.
So I can do maybe Qada before
Okay.
end of this month and then do my Shawwal fasting within this month.
What if I was traveling for most of Ramadan? I traveled 26 days in Ramadan.
That's
There's only,
painful.
it happens.
Yes. Depends. Then.
You can still fast when you're traveling.
He chose not to.
Oh,
So there always is going to be scenarios. Yes.
would you try to do it immediately? Because it's like the idea is you might pass away before you make.
So
Yeah.
I'm saying like I want us to think of arguments to support both positions. All right. One argument was the one that Iman brought forward. Sound, right? I think it's a valid. I think it's a strong argument. What's the argument for the opposing side? One of them is, all right, if anything that I am obligated to make up, it will always be my responsibility on my neck.
Yeah.
Meaning that ideally I should do what?
Fulfilling.
I should fulfill it as soon as I can. So I think that's a sound argument. What else? The wording of the hadith. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, "Man sama Ramadan thumma atba'u bi sitta min ash-Shawwal." That the one who fasts Ramadan and follows it with the 6 days of Shawwal. So this goes back to one of the discussions that we had previously on what? A broader discussion that we had
On the wording.
on wording. Okay, good. And what were the 2 types of wordings that we deal with?
Khabar
Even broader,
and command.
even before that.
Was it literal and metaphorical?
Nice try. Very good. Like literal and metaphorical, right? Haqiqa and majaz. So here, if I take this hadith and I take it the way that I'm presenting it to you, I'm taking it literally. What is a metaphorical way of interpreting the hadith?
Meaning not immediately after that, any time.
Okay, it could be maybe there's a time that could be understood from it. What else? Did the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man sama Ramadan kullu"? I'm sorry, I should have translated that. Did the Prophet ﷺ say, yeah, I'm looking at you like a light bulb moment. I was like, wait, nobody understood. Like, so whoever fasted all of Ramadan then followed it.
Didn't account for the nuance or like the specific, like what if somebody has to make up?
No, so I would push back and say yes, he did. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Why? Because he didn't say whoever fasted all of Ramadan. He said whoever fasted what? Whoever fasted Ramadan. Right? So does it mean that he has had to have fasted all of it?
Yeah.
No. Like even if you look at the apparent hadith, can you understand it to mean all of Ramadan? Yeah, for sure. If you take it literally, but if you take it figuratively, you can take it to understand that okay, even if I fasted some of it, it's okay. Because then I can make up. So somebody missed the entirety of Ramadan. It might be a different scenario, right? It might be a different situation. It's like this person didn't even, you know what I mean? Like why would I skip the entirety of Ramadan and then go and do the sunnah fast, right? That situation sounds a little strange.
Breastfeeding
Possibly.
moms.
So, but breastfeeding moms, they have a bigger problem. They not only can they not fast Ramadan, but they also won't be able to fast Shawwal, right? You know what I mean? If they're excused from Ramadan, like unless something happens where automatically they can fast Shawwal. By that point, they've probably already missed 2 Ramadans. So will you have unique cases? People have terminal illnesses, like cancer patients. Once they're cured, you know, they're healthy again, they can start fasting again. You know, they probably has a number of fasts that they have to make up as well. So, you know, those unique scenarios are always going to be exceptional. But when the Prophet ﷺ, when he gives us a command, or when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us a command, the command is generally for who? Right, somebody who's healthy and sound, right? Somebody who's healthy and sound. It's not for those exceptional cases, they have exceptional rulings. Make sense? The command to perform an action is a command to perform both the act and whatever is required for the completion of the act. Like what?
Wudu,
well,
all the conditions.
Yeah. Right. So wudu is an easy example. Wudu is an easy example. Yani, for every time there's a command for prayer, is it associated with a command for tahara, for wudu?
Not necessarily.
No, in wording. No, it's not, right? Aqimus salah, establish the prayer, And you have this time and time again. But from those texts, we can understand what? Right, you have to do wudu. Meaning that not only is prayer an obligation, but also being on tahara or being on purity is also a condition for that. So that's a very common one. But what are some other examples? Right, your aura needs to be covered, right? This is also an obligation in order for me to establish my prayer. And those things are directly connected to the prayer. Yani, meaning that, do I always have to be on wudu? No, I only need to be on wudu specifically when? When I'm getting ready to pray. Or does my aura always have to be covered? No, only, well, I mean, there are other situations in addition to salah, obviously. But like when taking a shower, your aura has to be covered, right?
It was a question like this.
So, is it okay to take a shower naked?
Wait, that was a question.
It was. I mean, the thing is, it's a legitimate question. You know, I don't mean to dismiss the question at all. But,
I get that because I was in
Yeah.
Afghanistan
Yeah.
and they have those public bathhouses. What is it called?
Hammam. Yeah.
And I thought you had to wear something, but there were people who did. That shocked me. But
Well, that was public, you mean?
Yeah, it was
No. That's different.
Private.
And even the Prophet. No, I'm saying even there's a hadith in Abu Dawud where the Prophet actually forbade people from going to those places. Yeah, for that reason. Where just like open nudity, it's not.
In Germany.
Allah Mustan. Yeah, like families, man. Like no, in families, like it's so it's so strange.
They have.
No, I mean there's a difference between there's a difference between like nude beaches and like nude families. You know what I mean? Like it's part of their culture. It's so strange. I mean, you know, and people call America liberal, but anyway, so we had said the aura is a good example. Wudu is a good example. What else?
I am qibla.
Okay, those are all related to salat. Like, what about other things? Hajj. Ihram is a condition, right? That's something that's understood. What else?
Yeah.
Right, the intention. So all of there are obligations that are connected to those, and in order for the action to be fulfilled, then that also becomes an obligation. The next part, for example, that should be 4 without the E. The command to perform the prayers is a command enjoining the purification that is necessary for prayer, like you guys mentioned. When the act is fulfilled, then the person to whom the command is addressed is released from the charge laid upon him. And we had talked about this, meaning
You won't be like held accountable anymore.
that I won't be held accountable after the action is performed for not doing that particular action. Okay. Any questions?
So you mentioned the salah. You said the Hanbali opinion is you have to just do it immediately.
Yeah. So so basically and it's more of a theoretical argument, is basically when are you obliged to pray in the beginning time? So here you're making it a conditional. Some people will say no, you're not. So then the Hanbali will respond and be like, okay, well, prayer is always an obligation. How can you say there's a time where you're not obligated to do it? Yeah, it's a theoretical discussion. It's not, like practically, there's a reason that we're given a window. Like, I'm obliged to pray. Am I obliged to pray in the beginning time? No, I'm obliged to pray within the time. Within the time. Even the prayer times, the scholars, they've only put the prayer times into like 3 major categories. Can you guys imagine what they are or what they would be? No, like, so I understand what you're saying, but let's talk about the window itself.
Sunset.
No, within any prayer time. I want you guys to give me a generic description of any prayer window. I don't want specific ones.
Probably when it first enters.
Okay, when it first enters, good.
To the next one.
The thick middle part.
Okay, the middle part, and then
Maybe
and the last part,
15.
right? The last time. So and that's exactly how they describe it, right? They call it al-waqt al-mubadar, like the beginning time. But how do you define the beginning time? Is it the first 5 minutes, first 15, first hour? Do you understand? Do you understand like the problem when you say the early time? Like, because it becomes very subjective. It's very difficult to define. And then you have the bulk time, which is the middle time, and then the last time is called waqt al-mudiq. This is the only time where it's actually makruh to pray. Why? Because you're rushing, right? And that's the problem. The problem isn't the prayer. Like, your prayer is still valid, but because you're rushing, you don't have khushu'. And khushu' is agreed upon that this is something that is an obligation during prayer.
Is there any, like, if you did, some people say you shouldn't delay your prayer. What does that mean? Is it just like delay?
Good. So, and I think we had mentioned this before. When we talk about it is not permissible to delay your prayer, what does that mean?
Beyond the window.
Beyond the window.
So you're not sinful at all if you're within the window, but you don't have a valid excuse for delaying. You're just sitting, or you're just
Watching your show all
Yeah.
night.
yeah, basically. Like,
Yeah.
are you sinful for that?
No.
Because you don't.
Like I said, the only problematic time is when.
When the
The
time's
end.
up.
What, like, that's khalas. You know what I mean? Like, that's when you're actually sinful. If I let my dhuhr go until past asr, like, I've committed a sin. The only other time that it's makruh is when it gets toward the end of the time, right? That's where it actually becomes problematic. And again, it's not because you're falling outside the window. It's because you don't have the khushu' and you're trying to rush to finish before the end window finishes. Yes.
I have a question on Maghrib, bro.
Yeah.
Because there's like difference of opinions about the redness.
Yeah.
So like the general rule is like your salah ends when the next one starts, but
Mhm.
Maghrib, what is the case? with
Even with the Maghrib, even the case with Maghrib, the only problem is that there are certain calculation methods that don't take that into account. So if you follow, like, for example, the al-Qura calculation, it's fixed at an hour and a half after Maghrib. Like, they just fix it like that. But if you look at the general Maghrib time, it's like, I'd say like maybe like a little less than an hour. You know what I mean? Like, it's like maybe like 40 minutes to 50 minutes or so. Yeah. But there's a good amount of time, unless you're Maliki. The Malikis have the strictest window. Like, they say that the time for Maghrib is basically from the time the adhan ends until you finish your prayer. Like, that's it. Like, that is the Maghrib
So you can't
window.
just go by like your standard prayer app, which says that.
Yeah. So with it's a little bit
That's
more.
the count for when Maghrib actually
Yeah.
starts.
So
Shows up.
because there is a gap between when Maghrib ends and Isha actually starts. Technically, there should be a connection there, but because of that gap, I would say I think 40 minutes is a good window. If you can pray within that time, you're still okay. As long as there's some, you know what I mean, like some remnants of light, you're fine.
The Hanafis,
Mhm.
as far as I remember, as far as I heard from Sheikh Hakim, he said the Jumhur go with the redness
Yeah.
on the horizon, and Hanafis
Mhm.
say it's makruh beyond the redness.
Right.
You are not yet out.
You're not out of the time.
Right?
Yeah. But it's preferred not to pray at that time. Yeah. That makes sense. So, like, I think the Malikis have the smallest window, and I think the Ahnaf might have the largest one. And that's another thing. Like, you have a little bit of fiqhi discussion with that, but that is something that they are unique for. The other thing is, even with the Malikis, they have two qawls. That one is the one that's more popular, that you pray immediately, like from adhan until the end of prayer. But the second one is like, even when the darkness comes in the sky, the prayer time is still in.
Even also, right? Like, there's a 2 times for also ending.
So
Like,
no, with
sun or something.
no, with the Hanafis, it has to do with the length of the shadow. So basically, the Jumhur, they say that your zawal shadow plus the length, that's when asr starts. For them, it's the zawal shadow double the length.
Yeah, but even the ending.
Yeah.
I'm saying, like,
Mhm.
I don't know if it's
No, the ending's the same. The ending's the same. The only time is the waqt manhiyun an, like the prohibited time to pray. That's all. Yeah.
Sorry, it's about like traveling.
Mm.
So if you're returning home, can you still combine like the 2 prayers that like you missed while you were traveling?
So the combining, we had said that there are a number of reasons to combine, right?
You're traveling.
There are less reasons to shorten, right? I can only shorten when I am actually traveling, but I can combine for more reasons than that. So even if I'm coming back from a journey, if I'm within that radius, I can still combine, but I can't shorten. Okay.
Okay, so like if I was like coming home on a plane and it was like it passed over Maghrib time, I couldn't pray like
You couldn't pray Maghrib.
yeah, I couldn't pray Maghrib on the plane. And when I got home, I could pray like Maghrib 3, and I couldn't do Isha 2. I have to do 4.
Yeah, you do the full prayer.
Okay.
Yeah, because you're home now.
Okay. Okay.
One more question about the salah.
Sure.
And so in Surah Al-Ma'un, where it says, الَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنْ صَلَاتِهِمْ سَاهُونَ.
Yeah.
So the sahun is not, they're just delaying, because they're praying, but they're delaying it
Past the time.
next prayer.
Yes.
Okay. So it's not just delaying.
Because why?
Window.
No. Because they're not giving the prayer its importance.
Okay.
But the thing is, if somebody's praying in the prayer, like within the window, how can you say that person isn't giving importance? Do you understand the problem? Like
Well,
what?
even if you're not doing nothing.
Even if you're not
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, another problem is like another common, rule that we say, it's like, oh, well, this is haram. Okay, why is it haram? Because it takes you away from remembering Allah. Well, so does so does driving and like walking. Like,
Yeah.
it's like what, everything's haram because it takes me away from remembering Allah. Yeah, it's like, why is like basketball is haram? It takes you away from remembering Allah. Like what? Like what? Okay, it's like this conversation is taking me away from remembering Allah. But like,
She doesn't chew gum
Yeah.
because it stops her from doing dhikr.
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. I mean, listen, I haven't reached. No, I'm saying like I haven't reached that level, but like there's. I don't want to say anything about anyone, but it's, there is definitely a false piety out there. And I'm not saying she's one of those people, but there definitely is this sense of like false piety, like doing, like just going above and beyond and kind of flexing that you're going above and beyond.
So you're just
Yeah. No, I like why?
it's not related to.
Anyway, so praying within the window, you are fine. Like just, as long as you're praying within the window, you're good. But things taking away from Allah's remembrance, there's so many things we do on a day-to-day basis that take us away from Allah's remembrance. That is not a criteria for halal and haram. It's just not. The criteria for halal and haram is if it takes me away to what point. And we had put 2 conditions. Yeah. That takes Allah's rights or others' rights.
Oh.
Yeah, very simply, right? So if one of these 2 is being violated, at that point I can say yes, it's haram. But for other than that, no, it's not valid. Soccer. So the other point that he mentions, he brings up here, which is really interesting, is are the disbelievers addressed with the rules of the Sharia or not? Yeah. Yeah, there is. So the Jumhur says what? Yeah, they are. They are. Meaning no, the Malikis. So like they say that they are addressed with that, meaning that not only will they be punished for disbelieving in Allah, but they'll also be punished for not praying, not fasting, not making zakat, not making hajj. The counter to that is what? If a disbeliever prays, it's not accepted, right? Or if a disbeliever makes hajj, it's not going to be accepted, or gives zakat, or whatever the case might be. None of these things are accepted. So it is a very theoretical argument. It really comes into play when you deal with issues when the Muslims are a minority. For example, if an individual owns a McDonald's, one of the things that they sell at McDonald's is pork, right? So here, if an individual is selling pork as a small portion of his business to people who think it's halal to eat pork, right? Now you start getting into issues like, okay, is owning McDonald's problematic or not?
You can run a liquor store then.
No, so now so the counter argument for liquor, gambling, and prostitution is those actually cause clear societal harms. Like what is a societal harm for pork? There's nothing apparent, right? So a person is just harming himself. You might have a better argument with like possibly vaping or like tobacco, But with those things, no, not so much.
Aren't
Yeah.
those makruh?
What?
Like tobacco and stuff?
There's a difference of opinion. There's a valid difference of opinion. So there are some that look at the criteria of its poisonous effects, and there are some who say like there are no immediate effects from it, right? And it requires a certain level of excess to get to that point.
So they're basically, but I feel like that would be kind of a ruling for like at least the haram position. Like we didn't know that before, so I feel like you need to like have. Would that apply to other like something smoked in the past?
So
they didn't know that.
No. So the thing is here, there are things that we consume in our day-to-day lives. Do they have long-term ill effects?
Yeah.
Right, they do. Right, there are a lot of things that we consume in our lives that do have long-term ill effects. Now, where does smoking fall under? Does that fall under more harmful, or does it fall? Do you understand where it starts getting gray and where it starts becoming problematic? Because someone might be like, okay, well, sugar is more harmful. Right, or non-GMO products are more cancer-inducing. Yeah, I mean, there has to be studies for this. People just can't come up like out of the blue and be like, no, the high fructose corn syrup is more dangerous than smoking. It's like, no, I don't think that's how that works. Like, yeah.
That it's harm?
And I thought it was, but it's not. Yeah, so you have a number of actually Azhari scholars who don't say it is, and they say it's makruh. And you have a number of Deobandi scholars also who say it's makruh, is disliked. And those are two very big schools and very large institutions in the Muslim world. Not necessarily that we agree, but it's important to understand that such opinions exist, because there are only certain things in the deen that you can say are completely black and white. Like, what things are haram? Alcohol, zina, lying, cheating, stealing, backbiting, right? There's no khilaf on any of those things, like eating pork. Right? But when you start getting into things like this, like later day things, like can you really say that there's a consensus on some of these things, especially when there are strong counter arguments? So here, what has landed you in hell? They said that we did not pray, and it all revolves around this ayah. We'll leave the tattoo discussion for another time. No, there is because it's based off a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I think Ibn Mas'ud narrates it. He said the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam cursed the ones who put gaps in their teeth, the ones who wear hair extensions, and the ones who tattoo themselves. So there's a very long discussion on what the meaning of the hadith is. Is it haram because of the action itself, or is it haram because it's imitating prostitutes?
Oh.
And then if you say that it's haram because it's imitating prostitutes, then you would have to see what is culture, like, you know what I mean? Then there would be a cultural application of how prostitutes, like, for example, in American culture, what do prostitutes wear?
Wigs.
Like wigs, very high heels,
Yeah.
a lot of makeup, very revealing clothing, right? This is something generally culturally what is associated with prostitutes. All of those things, because that is what they wear, we would prohibit them even in private gatherings for women, right? Because you shouldn't be imitating people who are known for evil and spreading facade and social harm. Does that make sense?
So is that understanding where to evolve culturally?
Yeah, so that's the argument, right? The argument is like, is this meant to evolve culturally, to go along with culture that's associated with that type of people, or are they meant to be in and of themselves problematic? Yeah.
I don't know if this is like obvious, but like, are you saying that things evolve culturally? Like, what things are once haram have to do with something that for example,
Sure.
polish,
I'm sorry?
like nail polish, for example.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Nail polish is problematic for me. I haven't come up with a reasonable solution for it. I know they have this new one that's supposed to be permeable, right? Where the water comes through. I don't even know how to test that. Like,
Maybe she has two questions. Meaning
yeah. No. So number. Sure. Okay. Let's sure. So let's deal with one question at a time. Number one, any do rulings evolve? They can. There are certain things that don't. So what are the things that are fixed in the Sharia?
Clear sin.
Like the major sins, that are agreed upon. Like it's not like, okay, yeah, well, lying was haram during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, but now lying has a good purpose. No, that's something that will always stay fixed. Backbiting, stealing, murder, these things are very much fixed. Why? Because this is agreed upon across the board that these things are not only are they haram, but they're forever haram. The things that are obligated, like what? Like fasting, prayer, giving zakat. These were an obligation and they are forever going to stay an obligation. Now, are there other things that might fall under that there might be some cultural context that will require some shifting? Yeah, there are. Some things like, what's a good example? Qaza. Have you guys heard about the haircut? Qaza? Like, where you leave patches of hair and you cut patches of hair. There was a certain cultural way that was understood. And what was part of the purpose of the Prophet ﷺ saying don't do that? Number one, when he prohibited it, is it a prohibition that was actually haram? Or was it the type of prohibition that we'll get into that was disliked? Right? This is something that has to be discussed. That's the first thing. The second thing is, okay, what is the purpose of it? Right? Things have reasonings for them. Does this have enough room, or is there space for us to explore the reasoning behind it? Some of the reasonings behind it, even now today, if you see someone with patches of hair, right? Usually that someone has some kind of mental health condition, or there's so associating yourself with those type of people is extremely problematic. The only other space where I see where people have patches of hair is like at a sports event. It's not like people walk around with that type of style. But to now liken that to a fade, or to liken that to, like other different types of haircuts, I find that a huge stretch. I find it a huge stretch. So is there room for some cultural context for certain things? Yeah, I think there is. But on these things that are established within the religion, no, that it wouldn't apply to those things. And about the nail polish. So the problem with nail polish is that it's a cover, right? It's a clear cover that goes over the nails, and the nails were never made an exception to wudu, right? Those are things that have to be in wudu. So I know a lot of women, what they'll do is, like, the moment their cycle will start, they'll go and they'll put they'll put nail polish on. They're like, okay, I can at least wear this for a week now, but outside of that, I find it a hugely problematic issue, in terms of like how you deal with that in terms of wudu. In terms of just wearing it, that's more of a discussion. That's the cultural context discussion, and that how much can a woman beautify herself when she goes out, right? That's more of a discussion in that space. Now, is a woman allowed to? There's a difference between being presentable, right, and being attractive. Now, is a woman allowed to be presentable when she goes out? Yeah. What does that entail? I would say within the cultural context that we live in, that it's okay for her to wear what? Makeup. Like light makeup, but is the makeup that a woman normally goes out and wears, like, maybe like flesh tone lipsticks is very common. Like, it's a very American thing. Like Eastern cultures, they're much more brash, much brighter, but in a Western context, they'll wear much more muted colors. It might be just some foundation, maybe some mascara, right? So I would consider this very, very light with makeup. Like, I know way too much about this, right? So like, so like this would I would be considered this, like, this would be okay, for a woman to go out like that. Why? Because during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, the women used to go out wearing what? Not just jewelry, but they used to wear kuhl, right? And kuhl is a type of beauty. There is an attraction in that, right? There's a clear attraction in that when a woman is wearing kuhl. And the Prophet ﷺ didn't say anything. He didn't say, like, no, you guys can't wear kuhl when you go out. So I would say, based on that there is a cultural understanding on what it was to be presentable in that culture and what it is to be presentable in our culture. And I would think that's okay. But the type of makeup a woman wears, like, for example, at a wedding, it's not the type that a woman will wear going out or to go shopping, right? These are two different things. But then the question comes in, okay, what if she's actually going to a wedding? Right? Because now, is she standing out in front of other women? No, because everybody's wearing everybody's wearing makeup. Like, like, everybody's wearing, it's not like, okay, she's the only one who is, or, no, everybody's dressed like that. Everybody's just like, and I don't mean over the top in a bad way, but I mean, like, everybody's just like over the top, like, everybody's like really dressed up. So if everybody's dressed up at the event, is there going to be any extra attention that's being drawn to that particular individual? I don't think so. And Allah knows best. I'm sure a lot of my friends would be upset with that, but So that's where I think there's room for cultural understanding of these things. Yes, Fatia. Okay,
How
so
about the henna?
henna, that's another great example. The Prophet ﷺ never prohibited the women from wearing henna, and there's very clear hadith that he allowed the face and the hands to be shown. Where do you put henna? Like on your shoulder? No, you put it on your hands and your feet. The two most apparent places, right? These are the two most apparent places that could be seen in all cultures. So
Like I wear it on my chest.
I don't know. Oh no. So no, you know what? I think you're confusing it with something else. So there's a custom for how you deal with the animals that are to be slaughtered. You have something called al-Qala'id, and basically what you do is you mark the animal. And why do you mark the animal? Because this is an animal for udhiyah. This is meant to be slaughtered on Eid. So what are the two ways that they used to do it? Either they would take like old sandals and they would hang it around the neck of the animal, or they would take henna, right? So they would actually put a lot of henna on the animal, or put like an X on the animal, or put a mark on the animal, just to show that this animal is specifically for slaughter. In case it gets lost, you know what I mean? Like they know where to take the animal back to, or this animal, like even if somebody who steals animals, he might feel a little shy, be like, oh man, this is like a Eid slaughter animal, you know, and try to get it back to the herd or whatever the case might be. For larger animals like camels or cows, they actually didn't do that. They would actually cut away a piece of the skin. So they would like cut like a square out and like rip the skin off, and that would be the mark for the animal.
Oh, this is not like a guy though, like a person. Right?
And maybe he's going to be slaughtered. I don't know. So like, so the command of something is the prohibition of its opposite. Like what? The top here. The command to do something is the prohibition of its opposite. Good. Another example.
You can't not pray.
Right? Yeah. So the command to pray, meaning that it is impermissible, like it is haram to not pray. So that's it. It's just understanding the opposite of an obligation, and the prohibition of something is the command to do its opposite. In the same example that Iman gave, if it is haram to lie, it is an obligation to do taqiyya. Anyway, a prohibition a prohibition is a verbal request obliging the inferior to refrain from an act, and it indicates that the prohibited act is invalid. And this has to do with more of what we were talking about before, and how we address each other, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses us. And we had said linguistically, whenever I command someone, that it's not a command, it's a what? It's a request. Why? Because we're both on the same level, right? We're both on the same level. I can't actually command anyone else. But when we talk about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we talk about the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it's always going to be a command. Why? Because it's a place of authority. So when we talk about inferior, that's all that means, a place from authority to a subordinate. The verbal form of can also occurs with the meaning of permitting, threatening, equating, or creating. And we had gone through a number of different examples talking about how we actually extracted that, because there are many times we can look at a verse, and from the verse we'll be like, no, that's a command isn't intended here. Here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "I'malu ma shi'tum," is it do whatever you want? Is this really a command for us to do whatever we want? No, it's a threat, right? It's a threat. It's a warning. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, yani kun fayakun, yani be, and it was. Over here, is there a command, or is there a creation that's happening? Right, there's a creation. So there are different ways that orders are being used throughout, the Sunnah, being used throughout the Quran. And by looking and doing a survey of them, it actually gives us a context of how to deal with many of those texts. So prohibitions. Here, وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا الزِّنَا, and here, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا لَا تَسْأَلُوا عَنْ أَشْيَاءَ إِن تُبْدُ لَكُمْ تَسُؤْكُمْ. That's do not go anywhere near adultery, and you who believe, do not ask about matters which, if made known to you, might make things difficult for you. Which one? What are the two rulings here? Okay, so this one's a prohibition. You sure this is not makruh? No? Okay. And this one? You think? Huh? You think it's makruh? You think it's disliked? I would agree. So this is definitely a prohibition, right? There's no doubt about this. Versus this is something that is disliked. Why? How did you guys tell the difference? I'm sorry.
It says it. The last part of the sentence.
Oh, I mean, oh, dang, I should have pre-translated that.
And if it gets close to adultery, you might or might not. So that's not, I feel like that
Mhm.
solid.
Yeah.
This verse is general, like, and you didn't say what things we should not ask about.
Okay. So because of the generality, does this mean that are there things that we can ask about? So over here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu la tasalu an ashya'an tabdu lakum." Like, what if those things are known to me? Can I ask about them? Yes, I can. So it's not a prohibition on all questions. And there is going to be sometimes are there questions that we have that we know a little bit and we don't know some? So where do those fall under? You know what I mean? So because there's a spectrum here and there's a gradation here of when we deal with questions, it makes more sense that this would be makruh, and it makes more sense that this would be disliked. Yes, Fazia.
I don't know if you already covered this, but on the first prohibition, there's some cultures that do temporary marriages.
Yeah,
Is
not
that-
culture, sects.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very simple.
Yeah, so they're called Sunnis who live in the Gulf, but no, I'm just So basically, you do have this problem. And it's a longer discussion of what muta actually entails and what it is. The issue that I have when we talk about muta is that I don't think it's permissible. I don't, but I also can't say it's zina. Why? Or because there's a contract, right? There's a marriage contract with terms.
But
Yeah.
it's only if both parties understand. Sometimes the woman doesn't know.
I don't think in those situations, I don't think the woman cares.
Situation that if that comes with like an expiration date.
Yes.
Okay.
So yeah. So either it's going to be the pronounced divorce or the time frame, like whichever one proceeds. Yes, they do. Yeah. No, that's misfar, and that's what happens. So you have a lot of people from the Gulf who do this. So there are two types of marriages that have become very. It's basically a band-aid over a broken bone. And what they've done is they've given two methods of people. They're temporary marriages in effect that they don't have intention of having a family with these people. So they have something basically. They will go, and for the time period that they've traveled, they've already intended that they're going to divorce this woman once the travel ends, which is technically a type of muta. Or they have one where they marry and the woman, she's like, yeah, I don't need anything from you. Like, I don't need you to pay for anything, blah, blah, blah. I just want a husband to be available. So these are the two types of, I call them band-aid marriages for the larger divorce problem that is happening in the Gulf states. That they're kind of trying to deal with this issue and deal with this problem. And it unfortunately, it's snowballed into something worse now. It hasn't helped at all. Yeah.
I remember reading from Shāfi's commentary on the book,
Mm.
and he said there is a debate between the scholars in mind. If you verbally announce your term, or if you have an intention.
Yeah.
What do you think about this? I mean, if someone has an intention, but does not pronounce it.
Yeah, I mean, for me it is. For me it is. But the scholars who say like no, because there's a chance like your heart might change or whatever the case is. My problem is you're already going in with the intention of divorce. Like it's an integral part of you've made it a personal condition. You know, and what percentage of people actually change their mind? I think that's a study that needs to be done. That the people who've gone in with the intention of divorce, what percentage of them actually change their mind and they're like, no, she's a good wife, I'm gonna keep her.
So you'd say both of the things you just mentioned before. You say both of them be haram.
Yeah, I think personally, I think all of these types of marriages are impermissible, because the purpose of marriage is to establish a family. And I don't mean by family children. Yeah. I mean by family. Like, you know, you have a unit, you have a married unit of a husband and wife and cats, right? Like, I don't like the way we're going at my house, my cats are about to outnumber my kids. So like, that is the purpose. The purpose of marriage is to establish family. And like I said, family doesn't necessitate children. You know, for some people, children is good. For some people, you know, they don't want to. I don't really care. Like, that's their business. But it is to establish family. And creating this culture of like going in with the intention of divorce or going in with the intention of it not working. If I'm already walking in with that, the chances of that marriage failing are even higher. And the chances of marriage failing are already high, right? It's like, I think even worldwide, it's like around 50%. Half of marriages fail. Those are in general just not good odds. So going in with something that is going to increase those odds is just making things worse. So the same thing we did, inshallah, maybe we can do some of this next week, bi'idhnillah. But let's just go through the first set of verses. Wadharul bay', leave off trading.
Contextual with,
Sure. It has to do with Jummah, right? So over here, leave off trading. This has to do with Jummah, at the time of Jummah. So do you guys think it's haram or makruh? And why?
If it's harder to live off, yes, we must.
Okay. So you're saying it's haram. Good.
Yeah.
What else? Anyone else? Or you guys all agree it's haram?
Wait, are you saying like on the day?
No, not the day. At the Jummah time. The khutbah is going on, and all right, nah. Dar Hijrah is probably a bad example because we have multiple. Let's say that there's a masjid in the world that has one Jummah. Yeah. Huh? The last Jummah. Okay, but that's a good. Alhamdulillah, because there's nothing that's after it. All right. I know, right? So is it okay for me? I'm coming at 1 o'clock. Like, so the only Jummah that's left is mine. And can I sell now at 1:30? Once I hear the adhan, can I continue selling? No. And if I do, is there a sin on me or not? Yes. Right. So, and this is Jumhur. Like all of the scholars agree that leaving off trading, like this is a command. This is a clear religious command, and you will be sinful if you trade during that Jummah time. Unless you are the khatib, Allahu Akbar. Yeah, because I can delay the Jummah, right? Right? A traveler or sick women, right? So these groups of people, they can actually continue trading with each other, but those people, children shouldn't be doing trading anyway. If they are, we have bigger problems. Yeah, Allah musta'an. Yeah. Here, وَأَنْفِقُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ وَلَا تَلْقُوا بِأَيْدِيكُمْ إِلَى التَّهْلَكَةِ وَأَحْسِنُوا إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. Spend in Allah's cause. Do not contribute to your destruction with your own hands, but do good, for Allah loves those who do good. So here, don't throw your hands. Man, dang, I should have retranslated these. But don't throw your hands into destruction. Is this a prohibition or something that is disliked?
What is the destruction, like bankruptcy or whatever? Like just like spending all your money?
Yeah, being a spendthrift, right? Because over here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where is He saying to spend your money? In Allah's cause. What does that mean? Like
charity, or is it referring to jihad?
It could be referring to jihad, right? No, it can also be referring to what part of Allah's cause are those people who have rights over me. Yes.
Oh.
Right. So if I'm spending on my family, or or on my community, or in a business, those are all part of Allah's cause. Why are they Allah's cause? Because they're all permissible, right? As long as I'm not spending it in haram. And we had said that in order for spending to fall into a haram, the amount of spending to have fallen into haram, I have to have doing what? I have to violate the same thing, right? It's the same two conditions. I have to have violated one of Allah's rights, or I have to have violated one of others' rights, right? So that's what in general it is. And don't throw your hands into destruction. But if I'm a spendthrift, I buy nice cars, nice TV, nice shoes. It's disliked, right? Those things are definitely disliked. Unless I can, a new Kia, Allah musta'an. May Allah guide the purchasers of Kias. So these things are definitely makruh, and it's important to keep all of these things in mind. And it becomes haram when one of these two conditions are violated. And lastly, wajtanibu qawl az-zur, that shun the filth of idolatrous practices and beliefs. Oh, well, it should only be this part. I'm sorry. Shun false utterances. The prohibition? Yes, I agree. I see this to be a prohibition. And you'll find that a lot of the things that we were talking about the things that are agreed upon haram, they come in the same context. It comes in the same structure. Al-ijtinab, staying away from, or warning from. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us and make this beneficial. Taib, any questions? Oh, the nail polish one? Oh man, it's a tough one, man. It's tough. Yes.
With that last slide where you talked about that one verse where it says don't ask about certain things in which you might find burdensome, find out the truth. What's like the gray area for that? Because like I'll go to scholars all the time and ask about a fatwa for this or a fatwa for that, and depending on the scholar, they might have a stricter opinion which might stress me out, or then another one will have a more lenient opinion, and then I'll get stressed out because I'm like, what am I supposed to be following? So like, what's the area of that? Like, what should you do?
It's when you know, right? If you get an answer, what's a good way of putting it? If you ask somebody a question and they give you an answer and you're like, okay, but what do you mean by that? And they just kind of like, hey, listen, take what I gave you. What is he telling you at that point? If you ask more, what are you going to do? You're going to get yourself in trouble. So it's better for you to run with whatever it is that I give you.
Can't handle what they gave you.
So I mean that's different. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, la yukallifu Allahu nafsan illa wusaha. Like Allah only burdens you with what you can bear. The problem that happens when we deal with that verse is that many times we feel we can define our own selves what we can bear and what we can't. Right? But it's actually only Allah is the one who created us. He understands what our limit is. I don't understand I don't even know. And for those of you that go to the gym, for example, the amount of weight that you can lift, you have an idea of how much you can, but you really won't know until what? Like until you try, until you get like underneath the bench. Huh? So you have to or how fast you can run. There's certain things that again we might think that okay, no, this is my limit. But the actual limit is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows about it. Like he knows us more intimately than we know ourselves. So he understands what our limits are. In terms of seeking fatwa, at the end of the day, I mean, you're welcome to ask like 10 different people. It doesn't make a difference because at the end of the day, all of those people, they're scholars and they're doing their own personal ijtihad, right? They're doing their own research. They're trying to give their own answers. They're trying to give something reasonable to help you understand how to navigate that situation. And there's a difference between saying like, okay, I might not be able to do that, right? Or knowing you can't do it. So there's a good example of this during the time of the Prophet ﷺ. A man, he came to the Prophet ﷺ, he's like, oh man, he's like, I'm done. I've destroyed myself. I'm finished. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, well, what happened? He's like, I slept with my wife during the day in Ramadan. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, okay, well, fast for 60 days continuous. So he said to the Prophet ﷺ, he's like, I couldn't do one day. And you want me to fast 60? So that's a different situation because at that point he's experienced it. Yeah. So he changed, so he scaled it, he scaled it down, and the hadith goes on, but he scaled down the compensation for what he had to give. But at the end of the day, why can he say what he did? Because he experienced it. It's not like, okay, I don't know how fast I can run versus like I've been running for a year and this is my personal record, right? That there's a difference. In his situation, he's like, well, I've experienced it. I tried it. Like I was fasting in Ramadan and I couldn't do one day and you want me to do 60. Like, trust me, I won't be able to do it. Versus me thinking I can't. That's a problem. Like our biggest limitations as Muslims and our biggest hurdles and our biggest obstacles are generally ourselves, right? It's not like outside. It's not like the Zionists or, like America or the media is coming to get me. Like they don't care about me. Like I'm 100% sure. If I want to remove any type of shackles, I just need to remove the ones that are here. Absolutely. And there's so many verses that indicate that. Even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he talks about the Quran, he says, أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ أَمْ عَلَى قُلُوبٍ أَقْفَالُهَا. That do they not ponder over the Quran, or is it that there are locks over their hearts? Not locks over the Quran. Right? So basically Allah is telling us that the Quran is clear, it's understandable, the message is all there. The only thing that's stopping me from understanding it is me. I haven't put the effort in, and that's why I don't get it. Any other questions? I'll see those of you who come to the Tazkiyah class tomorrow, inshallah, and the rest of you I will see next week, bismillah. Wallahu a'lam wa sallallahu ala khayri khalqi nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.
But I believe the same time, but just